You can experiment with your investments. Choose the stocks you like one by one, or select Sector Spider ETFs and add the diversification of an entire sector of the S&P 500, like healthcare. With liquidity, all-day tradability, and transparency. Ready to add diversification to your equity investments? Before investing, consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses. Go to sectorspiders.com for a prospectus containing this information. Read it carefully. Visit us at sectorspiders.com.
If you have a money manager or a financial advisor working on your behalf, how can you make sure that they're doing their job? Here to talk with us about that is Ron Surz. He's president at PPCA. His firm focuses on investment portfolio construction in retirement plans. Ron, great to have you with us.
Well, thank you.
So knowing whether your money manager or financial advisor is doing their job requires that a person uses some type of measurement techniques, whether that be a benchmark or yardstick. Tell us more about that. How does an individual investor do that?
Well, no, it's a timely, because right now the annual performance reviews are going on. And the ritual is that's the big deal. At least once a year, the advisor meets with the client and goes over performance. This year, the press is already picking this up. About 80% of the active managers have underperformed their benchmark. And that's just, when you think about the fees involved, so the client's paying fees to the advisor, he's paying fees to the investment manager, and he's not getting rewarded for those fees. So I think in these meetings, what should be happening is the client should be saying, should we fire the investment manager? And the advisor should say this, but he's probably not going to. He should say, we need to look at why we hired them. And if we look at that, the number one reason is going to be because I, the advisor, brought them to you. I recommended them.
Based upon past performance.
Yeah, and he should actually own part of that decision.
Right.
That's not going to happen.
Right. No accountability.
Very little. You know, consulting is a credence good, which means it's mostly on faith. And afterwards, you know, the investor sort of has to trust in his faith. But if, and most of your listeners or viewers aren't going to know this, but advisors have used the wrong benchmarks forever. And the common benchmarks are indexes, like the S&P 500, and peer groups, which would be ideally similar managers. The S&P for everybody is crazy. For, you know, there are many money managers who just do what they do well, and they don't fit in the little square, and they're not a certain style, they're not a certain index. And what should be used there is blended benchmarks. So many would be, you know, a little bit of value, a little bit of growth. Others would have some stocks, some bonds, and whatever else.
Multi-asset class.
Multi-asset class. And that benchmark should reflect what they do. But that's rarely the case. And second to that, the common practice is to use peer groups, and peer groups are loaded with biases.
Yeah.
And probably the worst one is what's called classification bias, which I'll use this number for you. About more than half of the managers in a given peer group don't belong in there. They're not like the other guys.
Yeah.
If you're doing hedge funds, I don't know if any of your viewers do hedge funds, the number's close to zero.
Yeah.
Any one manager in a hedge fund peer group is not like just about any other manager in a hedge fund peer group.
So in other words, when you're doing a peer group comparison, you're comparing apples with oranges.
Exactly.
And it's not rational. So one last thing before you take off, Ron. At what point does a person make the decision, and it's a critical moment, that it's time to fire that money manager or that advisor?
Yeah. The money manager is maybe a little easier than the advisor. I think you fire the money manager when something has given there to make you think that the skill you believe they had before is gone. Mm-hmm. And you know, the typical rule of thumb is give them 3 to 5 years, because even the skillful guys aren't infallible, so they can make a mistake.
Yeah.
So I would say, you know, give it that time horizon. The advisor, I think, and this is the thing where investors just need to know the right questions. They need to ask that advisor, what are you using to evaluate this manager? If he says the S&P index, something like that, don't use that advisor, because you're not going to get good advice. If he says peer groups, that almost everybody will use, don't use that advisor.
Good points. Ron Surz with PPCA. I'm Ron DeLegge with ETF Guide.